When I was about 3 or 4, my little sister was about 1 or 2, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So it escalated pretty quickly. I still kind of remember her, in and out of like old memories, seeing her in the hospital.
You were like 4 years old, you said, roughly?
Yeah, about 4.
Yeah.
That was tough, man.
Yeah.
Because she ended up passing away at home. She ended up going on hospice. I remember the day she died.
Yeah.
We woke up, heard my father sobbing, and some people from the church that we were attending were there, and they picked up my brother and sister and I, and we went and spent, I want to say a few days, not exactly the exact time, but a few days away from home, and that was when they were preparing her for the burial and the funeral. So we didn't go to her funeral, but like I didn't know at the time what had happened. I just know that when I got back to the house, eventually, that my mom wasn't there anymore. We spent not too much time after that, moved to a different house in Burnett, and I remember during dinner time, we'd always say our prayers and whatnot, and we always thought that she was still at the hospital, like she went back to the hospital or something. And one meal, my father kind of came out and he broke down. He's all, "Your mother's no longer with us. She passed away. She's dead."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember my brother and I and my little sister just like sobbing uncontrollably, and like this dark gloom that just kind of went over the household. My father didn't take it very well. He was like a mechanic at the time. Got really heavily into drinking, and the state of Texas came and took us away from him.
Yeah.
So we ended up joining foster care not too long after that.
Really? What's that like? Like I said, like you're averaging what, 5, 6 years old at this point, or are you still 4?
4, just 5.
Yeah.
I was still super young.
Yeah.
No,
That's tough. I mean, like emotional. You know what I mean? Like I remember when I was 5 or 6. Like if your household, like your parents are everything, and especially you go from a family unit to foster care. Especially with your father escalating that quickly in the 80s.
Yeah.
Was that something that like the church, did they know that, or like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes and no. I think my father, most men in that time didn't, we have that issue now. Like guys just kind of saying they need help emotionally or physically or anything like that. My father was the same. Like he didn't express how sad he was, but I could tell. Didn't express that he needed help with us. Had 3 small children, 5, 4, and my little sister was almost 2,
Yeah.
And then he went from having his wife to now but 3 kids and working full time. I remember us being super poor. Like there were times when the power company would shut off our electricity. He'd go out there, and because usually back then it was like the power box was right there. So they would come in there, put on a lock. He'd cut the lock and turn it back on.
Yeah.
The water company do the same thing because we couldn't pay the bills. So he'd go out there, cut the lock, turn the water valve back on. Now it's all electronic, so they push a button. But they physically have somebody from the city come and shut it off. So I remember going through stuff like that at home after my mom died.
Were you guys close with them? Was it a close family unit in generalities?
Oh, yeah. That whole experience, watching her suffer through cancer, bonded us pretty good.
Yeah.
My father was never abusive towards us.
Yeah.
He was just, it crushed him after she passed away. So, like, super heavily into drinking.
Yeah.
But he would wake up every morning, go to work, and we would go to school. My sister was in like a pre-K Head Start program. I was in like kindergarten, so I remember my brother and I, he was in 1st grade, I was in kindergarten, we'd ride our bikes to school every day. So, 4 or 5-year-old riding these bikes that were way too big for us.
Yeah.
We'd ride them to school, and then I'd get out like at 12 o'clock because it's kindergarten, and I'd ride home.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah, my kids. I
can't imagine my daughter doing that right now, and she's 4.
Yeah.
About to get into that age range, and I'm like, I'm not letting her go. You know what I mean? That's wild. Like,
it's such a different time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I got 4 boys now, but my 3 that live at home are 10, 9, and 7.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get my 10-year-old to ride a scooter around the block.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there, like I said, 4 and 5 years old, we'd ride around the neighborhood.
You're like taking responsibility. Like, I need to get to school. I get back from school. You know, like all that stuff. Like, yeah.
Like, he helped us get dressed and stuff. But he was he'd take my little sister to Head Start, and then he'd go to work. And so my brother Dennis and I would ride our bikes to school.
Yeah.
That was kind of normal, small town Texas. But yeah, I remember the day that the state of Texas came and took us from the house.
Do you know how that escalated by any chance?
Just curious. So yeah, I actually was able to get a hold of my foster records from CARE, and a lot of it was reports from the neighborhood, the school.
Oh, okay.
Like, hey, I don't think these kids are bathing. I don't think these kids are eating. There wasn't a whole lot of interaction with my father in the community because he was withdrawn for one.
Yeah.
Super upset and depressed, and just a hot mess. Talking to him, like my aunt and stuff, he had a problem with drinking from since he was 16. He was actually a former Marine as well. Yeah. Spent some time in the Marines, got out, and started a family and just working, just your everyday American, I guess. But I think it escalated after my mom passed away, so it was a huge deal. But they're like, hey, the kids aren't bathing. I don't think they're getting fed. I don't remember not getting fed. Like, we always ate, but there was times where we were eating peanut butter out of a jar because that's all we could afford for dinner. And we were dirt poor, single income back that day, and mechanics. So, it was a struggle, but I wasn't sad, or I didn't feel like we were poor,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Nintendo came out back in the day, the original NES systems. My dad ended up, I don't know how he got it, but one Christmas he showed up with it, and it was the coolest thing ever. Yeah. And so we'd play Nintendo all the time late in the night. Yeah. Because he would get off work, and he would drop our little sister off at the house, and sometimes we'd stay with the neighbors, or someone would come hang out with us, or he would go do whatever he wanted to do. But man, I didn't really feel neglected any. So that was a kind of a weird thing looking back at it, but I can see now, if I saw some kid without parents a lot of times, especially our age, my brother and I would roam the neighborhood streets. We hated being inside. We were outdoor kids. We'd go ride our bikes around the neighborhood, jumping big dirt mounds and stuff, trying to do crazy things. And I'm pretty sure some neighbors are like, what are these? I mean, if you think about it, if you saw some young kids just constantly walking around your neighborhood, you have to call somebody, man, where's his parents? These kids are just, we wouldn't break in anything, but still just
it's concerning.
4 and 5 year old kid just walking around.
If you were 8 or 9, it's a little different back then opposed to 4 and 5. Yeah. You'd be oh, they're 8, 9-year-olds. That's what they do. But 4 or 5, you're
these are small children.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just kids.
Yeah.
So, they, the CPS, Child Protective Service, got a lot of calls. And so they came and took my brother and my sister from school. So the thing is, I used to get out at 12 o'clock. Being in kindergarten, it was always half days. My brother, full day, so he'd get out 2:30. My little sister, same thing, until a parent had to come pick her up. She was in pre-K. Yeah. So same routine I used to do every day. I used to get out at 12, unlock my bike lock, ride home, and I'd sit there and play Nintendo until my brother would come home. And then my dad would show up, and my sister, an hour or two later. Remember playing. A couple hours went by. It started getting dark. Yeah. I'm sitting there by myself. I'm like, what the hell? And I thought about going to the neighbors. And my dad comes busting the front door in a panic. Yeah. He's scrambling around, trying to find stuff to pack. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, hey, where's Dennis? Where's Tiffany? And he's not saying anything. And he's running around the house, and he halfway packs this duffel bag, whatever. And we jump in this yellow station wagon we had. Yeah. And that was, back in the day before child seats and whatever, so I sat in the front seat, and he's like, hey, we're going to go to Aunt Donna's. And so we started driving towards Oklahoma, because my aunt lives in Oklahoma, and it was dark by then, and we probably got 20-30 minutes up the road, and he stopped on the side of the road, started crying. I'm like, hey, where's Dennis and Tiffany? He didn't say anything. He turned back around and went back to the house, and then we went, and both of us stayed at the neighbor behind us. So I slept on the couch that night. They were talking in the kitchen. I didn't really remember what they talked about, but, he was pretty devastated. Looking back, knowing the story, they came and picked up my brother and my little sister at school, CPS did, but they couldn't find me because I got out at noon, and I was at the house, and I guess no one decided to check the house besides my dad. Yeah. So, we went to sleep that night, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Big knock at the door. blue and red lights at the front door, and the cops showed up, and they came in. That's when they took me, and they put me in like an emergency shelter by myself, because I don't know where they took Dennis and Tiffany. But yeah, and that's when my foster care journey began.